Welcome to this week's episode of the Employee Advocacy and Influence podcast. My name is Bradley Keenan. I'm the founder and CEO of the employee advocacy platform DSMN8. In this week's episode, we are going to be talking about a few considerations when running an employee advocacy program in a regulated industry. So I would say that probably about 20% of our clients work in some kind of regulated industry. So whether they're in pharmaceuticals, which is probably the most common, but also things like oil and gas and law and legal, where obviously things need to be 100% accurate if you're going to post them onto social. And for many people, when we first speak to prospective clients, if they're in a regulated industry, that can almost be the initial objection when we say, hey, we run an employee advocacy program, let's talk. They say, yeah, we're not allowed to get our employees to post on social because we're in a regulated industry. And when you actually unpack that and you work out why that is, the biggest reason is that they don't want employees sharing inaccurate information on social that hasn't been approved by legal and could put them into hot water. Now, obviously, they can either do one of two things. They can either never post to social ever, which is obviously going to be damaging to the ability for them to communicate with their prospective clients, especially in the current world that we live in. Or they can look at a way to manage that process so that the biggest risk factor of somebody saying the wrong thing is essentially removed. So if you're going to run an employee advocacy program in a regulated industry, the most important thing that you have is I guess there's two things kind of in the same thing, which is making sure people say the correct information. And that starts with having some kind of process that means that you as a marketeer can create content that has a workflow that can be pushed through into your legal counsel to say, yeah, that's okay, or no, that's not okay. Now, obviously, legal counsels are very time poor, so that needs to be something that's relatively straightforward for them to do. And often that means just planning way in advance of the content you're going to put out so that there's plenty of time for them to review that content. And that might mean that you start producing content 3 months prior to running an employee advocacy program, but obviously that's going to be on a case-by-case basis. But there's no point in running a process to get legal to approve something if once you pass it to the employee, they completely disregard it and they change all of the copy. So one of the things you need to make sure you have as part of your employee advocacy program is the ability to lock post copy so that only the copy that's been approved by legal can be shared by your employees. And that has its limitations because obviously if somebody wanted to edit that themselves, then technically they could do that once they had shared a piece of content. But really, most people aren't going to do that. And if you build that into your training, then people are going to understand that if your copy's been written for them, that needs to be kept in the same way as it was when it was produced. So having the post copy is one thing, but do you have enough content? So if you're already producing content, then you need to look at how much content you're producing and is that enough to run an employee advocacy program? And the nice thing about producing content inside a regulated industry is those same processes that we just spoke about where we have legal check them, then the probability is that you're already going through that process to produce the content. Now, let's say you put together a white paper and that white paper is about some kind of change in your industry or some kind of news that you're reporting on, or it might be some kind of analytics or what have you. Once that's produced, then you already have lots of legally approved copy that you can use. So if you take that blog post and you break it down into its individual parts, then what you're going to be left with is graphs, statistics, quotes, and all of these things that by themselves, once you actually break them down into their components, those components can be used as social posts, and they can be used as social posts just supporting an image. It could be taking that content itself and making it into some kind of image. However you do it, that content has already been produced by legal. So as you are going through that process of running an employee advocacy program in a regulated industry, just try and be smart about how you use the resource of your legal department. And I would say that the final point in running an advocacy program, is again specifically in a regulated industry, is that there's going to be more questions around the process that you're building. So I would involve people earlier in that process. So if I'm bringing an employee advocacy platform in to talk about working with us, make sure that all of the content presentations have all been built around doing this in a regulated industry, and invite people into the company that could potentially be bottlenecks further down the line. Because if it looks like the legal component hasn't been the core consideration for you as you go through that process, then you're likely to be hit with resistance further down the line. So bring that forward. And if you do all of those things, then an employee advocacy program pretty much should run exactly the same way as it would in any other company, just with those additional steps to make sure that you're protected as a program leader. Now, if you're happy to listen to this outro, I've got a little bit of bonus content coming at the end that any social media or marketing manager would consider to be an absolute gift. So don't go anywhere. So firstly, I wanted to say thank you for taking the time to listen today. If you enjoyed today's episode and you want to be notified of future episodes, please do hit subscribe. And if you got value from today, I'd love it if you could either rate us or, even better, provide us with a review. We started this podcast so we could help people who are either looking to launch employee advocacy programs or already run programs at the moment. So the more feedback we get from our listeners, the better we can do this. So here is the bonus content that I promised. If you want to find out how active your employees are on social right now, if you click the link in the footnotes for the show, we will create a report for you that will show you not only how active your employees are on social, but also 2 competitors of your choosing. So you can really see how you benchmark against your competitors. And we will show you how this breaks down by seniority inside your organization and also geography. So hit that link and one of my team will be in contact. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this week's episode, and we look forward to seeing you same time next week.